Ahmed, thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview with us.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate it. So to start off, please, could you tell our students a bit about yourself, who you are, and what your responsibilities are?
Okay, cool. My responsibilities are varied, but I'm at Black River FC, which is predominantly an advertising agency. We're redefining that, I think, because the world's being redefined. I'm the executive creative director and the founding partner, so I do many things, yeah.
Great. So what we're going to ask you today is about the Nandos adverts that you guys are famous for. So first of all, the Nando adverts are very famous for being very current and immediately relevant. Now, when you decided to go the route of having them relevant and current, did you consider the cost implications of having these short, frequent adverts coming out versus more long-term adverts where you can get more mileage out of them?
Okay. I think the history the history on Nandos goes before our time as Black River FC. We've handled the account for most of 8 years now, but obviously the brand's been around for 25 years. So I think things have evolved over time in terms of the question that you asked. And in the beginning, they did fewer ads and less social commentary because as a function of budget. So it was a small brand, was brand new in the market. And whenever they did something, Nandos did something, they made sure that they got more bang for their buck. That was a very simple thing. No formulas, no models. It was basically going, we've got very little money, how do we make a lot of noise? And I think essentially that led to Nandos becoming the brand that it is today in terms of communication. Over the years, we have started doing more ads more frequently, but the Nandos brand and the marketing calendar is not devoid of any science. So there are certain things in the calendar they need to achieve. Obviously, like any retail brand or any respectable brand has to achieve certain targets. So a lot of our campaigns are actually come off the back of very solid thinking, a plan, an annual, a short-term, a medium-term, and a long-term plan. So that's the first point. The second thing is media has changed over the years. So what used to be a full-page print ad now is done as a post on Twitter or on Facebook or emailed. So what was considered an expensive medium historically or mode of communication now is inexpensive and far quicker, and you don't have to buy media time. So it's a combination of a lot of those things. I'm answering your question by not answering your question. But I think it's evolved over time, and it's not just big versus small. It's not just about contained versus very frequent. It's a number of those things, but the foundation sits in being able to do certain things at certain times of the year within the marketing calendar. And then what we've become really good at is peppering that marketing calendar with social commentary, communication, not even ads, when the time's relevant.
Absolutely, and you also touch on social media. So
yes.
Do you make extensive use of social media? Or
any brand that doesn't is dead in the water. I think our use of social media was a very primitive one in the early days. And I say early days, maybe a couple of years ago. But really, we used to have an ad, and the client would love the line, the copy, the message, and we would go, cool, let's send it to everybody. And it would mean our social media strategy in the beginning was sending it to all our contacts. And that's essentially how it started. It then got picked up by the publications like Mail and Guardian, certain ads, and got printed as editorial. Now it's a little more sophisticated than that. We work with a company called Retroviral. We work with Speakers Corner, a PR company. The combination of all those divisions to create more impact out of the same piece of communication is far more calculated now than it used to be. But using social media is essential.
In 2010, Advertising Age magazine named Nandos as one of the top 30 hottest marketing brands. How much value do you think awards and accolades add to the Nandos brand?
I think in any brand, creative awards are important because of profile. So winning it may mean something just to the advertising fraternity, but essentially does get exposure internationally, whereas normally it wouldn't. So absolutely, awards definitely help the profile of any brand when it's positive. But I must add that I don't think Nando's success over the last few years has been dependent on awards. So the Dictator ad that you're probably going to ask me about in a minute, The Dictator ad, for example, hasn't won any awards yet, except for in the local ad of the year, but is still known internationally. So I think whereas awards usually or historically serve the purpose in terms of international exposure, I think the internet, social media has taken to some degree some of the limelight from that. But also I think what the focus should always be on is amazing creative work, category redefining work, creative work that, and I don't hate to use the cliche, but that needs to kind of live beyond and outside the noise. That's essential. Whether that gets an award and gets a statue, I think is irrelevant. I think what it is getting it spoken about. So it used to be called word of mouth.
Okay. So, well, since you mentioned the last Dictator ad, it was cited that you said that actually the staff of Nandos in Zimbabwe was threatened after this ad was advertised. So did this lead to any policy change in terms of your strategy with Zimbabwe?
I think it certainly made us more cautious because obviously we created, the ad created a lot of an uproar in Zimbabwe and for the people that work on the brand in Zimbabwe. So I think, Nandos is, as surprising as this may sound, it's not a reckless brand. It's a very considered brand. It has, their philosophies that they live by: integrity, pride, passion, all those things. And it's an integrous brand. So it may not seem so when you look at the ads that we do that are very maverick and sometimes irreverent. But I think we're a very respectful brand. And in that case, when that particular issue happened in Zimbabwe where people were threatened, the response wasn't debated. We will pull the ad was a unanimous and instant response from everyone within the agency, within the marketing team, and within the rest of the business, because we saw that it had gone beyond the line that we had anticipated. So it has made us more cautious about Zimbabwe, but it isn't a policy change, because a policy change would essentially mean Nandos should stop doing what it's doing. And by definition, in South Africa, certainly, the brand is a social commentator. So if you remove social commentary from the brand, what are you left with?
So in terms of talking about social commentary, are there no concerns on your side in terms of, in the current media climate where there's more and more regulation being introduced, the Protection of Information Bill? Are you concerned about these increasing censorship?
I think yes, the answer is yes. If you're in any discipline within communications, you'd be concerned. I think if you're a citizen of South Africa, you'd be concerned because of the freedom of expression and access to information. I don't think it's that dire though, and this is a personal opinion. So I think there's a spirit to most laws that sometimes get misinterpreted. They may not be right or wrong, but I think the spirit of the Information Act may be misinterpreted. The point is, we are concerned as a communication industry around that. I think the success of South Africa as a country has been the freedom of expression. And I think, I'd like to believe that even parastatals, government, any institution in South Africa, as South Africans, we understand how valuable that is. So I'm putting a lot of faith in people understanding that. Yes, we are concerned about it, but I don't think you should be reactive, and I don't think anyone should be reactive just yet.
So are we going to see any ad about
there was one actually. We actually put one out where everything was censored in the ad. So we did put something out, and if it becomes relevant again, we may put something out. we may do it again.
Excellent. So people often talk about the Nandos ad, they laugh about them, it's very humorous, people enjoy them, but at the end of the day, does it sell chicken?
It does. It sells lots of chicken. We've got case studies now of different campaigns that have been extremely successful in terms of sales. Last year, December, we did the South Sea CEO campaign where we did our own comedian on the whole Trevor Noah thing. And it was one of the best Decembers Nandos had ever had. A few years before that, we had done a campaign where it was, ironically, another cell phone company, which was called the Yellow Hummer campaign. Was also a very successful sales campaign. So we're definitely seeing a correlation between spoken about communication and the sales, loved communication and sales, and that's not just a Nandos thing. If you look at any of South Africa's most talked about ads, you'll find that they're backed up with very good sales figures. if the product is amazing. And ultimately, even though we're talking communications here, it all starts with a great product. You'll notice that everything we do in our communication talks intrinsics. Talks about flame grilled chicken, talks about peri peri, talks about the different flavors and that you can order it in the number of flavors. So it always comes back to the product. If you have a great product, you've got great, well-loved ads, you will see sales. If that were not the case, I'd be out of a job. And I don't think anyone would be advertising and spending millions and millions of dollars globally doing or trying to do amazing advertising.
So what you're saying is if your product is not strong, all the advertising in the world is not going to...
There was a famous, exactly what I'm saying. There was a famous example of an ad, I think it was called Asproclear, if I'm not mistaken, and I stand to be corrected, but Asproclear did an amazing ad of the wife and the husband in bed, and she has an excuse about the headache, and then he gives her Asproclear. It was a fantastic ad, people loved it, but apparently the product didn't work that well. If try and find Asproclear in the cinemas, in the supermarket, you won't find it. If the product doesn't work, doesn't matter what you say about the product, it's going to be ineffectual. So you've got to start off with a product that works, and then you can entertain and convince.
Absolutely. In terms of Nandos, they use multiple mediums. So you use radio, television, billboards. Is there any medium that you think has a bigger effect than some of the other mediums?
We'll use any medium that helps us meet our objective. So there isn't any right medium. There's a right medium for a certain objective. We found great success in television in South Africa, because in South Africa, television is still one of the mediums that has one of the widest reach. And if you actually work out the cost per person, it's one of the most cost effective. Also, it's the emotive audio-visual kind of gives you that advantage. So we use television largely in South Africa still because that's where the market still is. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean we don't use social media on the upper end of that market. So whether that's Twitter or Facebook. And then we use print. Sometimes we're in the newspapers, whether it's the Daily Sun, we did a big campaign in that was relevant for that particular market, we'd use it. So there's different success stories within different media, and that's obviously all very calculated. I'll give credit to Chris Buerter from the Media Shop, who's been a partner of Nandos for many years, and he helps us create the strategy as well in terms of that. So there's no glory medium. I don't think there is, but traditionally in South Africa, and still is the case, TV is one of the most effective media.
All right. And then in terms of the complaints, which medium causes the most complaints?
It's the same thing. It depends. Nandos is by large a headline-driven brand, if you think about it. Whether it's something on a motorbike that says pulls more chicks than a Harley, to a print ad that talks about Juju, you've been served. It's a very simple, witty, quick line brand. Television expands a bit more on that, but there have been complaints that come from different media depending on the content. And I started out by saying we're moving away as an agency from being an advertising agency. I think where the world's moving is content-based. It's all about content. So where it gets played depends on where the audience is. But there's no particular medium that gets more complaints. It'll only be the function of how much you've spent in a certain media that you may get more. So if you spend more people have seen it on TV, they may get more complaints there. But no, there's no trend, I think, in one medium and another, yeah.
Then you often get strong reactions, even negative reactions from your advertisements. And is that a designed response?
No. I think if any brand intends to get a negative reaction, you've got a bunch of people who are really bored and self-indulgent. Every brand aims to get a positive reaction from their target market. So if my audience, chicken-loving people, are not going to be offended by something, but the beef-loving people are going to be very offended by it, we don't care. Because our audience is the chicken-loving, I'm giving an example. Mm-hmm. The chicken-loving people will charm. If anybody else outside our audience takes exception to it, they're welcome to it and they're entitled to their opinion. So we never ever go out for a negative response, never. But we know who our audience is and we try and evoke some reaction from them. We'd rather have an ad hated than not seen at all. But the intention is always for people to love the ad or love the content or love the debate surrounding the ad.
Yes.
So we all, or at least consider it and think about it. So I've never ever have we, certainly in this agency, done an ad with the intention to get a negative response, and we never will. Doesn't make any sense.
But in general, do you think South Africans are more tolerant of negative or even highly risky adverts than the rest of the world?
I think South Africans are very tolerant to that. I think as a nation, we're far more open than most nations. It's not a nanny state by any means. I've seen TV ads in the UK, in the States, and it's all so watered down, so safe, been researched. Super Bowl ads get checked and double checked and then watered down. Yeah, and it makes for a very uninteresting society. I think by nature of our society, with our diversity, as a nation, we are a collective of very interesting people, very open people, very opinionated people. And our newfound democracy certainly puts us on a high in terms of being able to express our points of view, no matter what they are. So I think that is created in a great environment to create ads like this. I think we're way ahead of other countries in terms of the content that we create, even in newspapers, in the press, but certainly in communications. I think everywhere else is proportionately, when you look at all the work that gets done, they're quite dull and uninspiring. Whereas here we've got very evocative communication.
So in your opinion, what do you think is the role of the media in society?
Very important role, obviously, in any society. Because I think the truth is, I don't know how many people realize the power of media. And I think whether that's from television content to editorial in newspapers to advertising has got a very persuasive influence. Invasive, certainly, because it kind of hits you in your face. But it has a very big role in terms of shaping a society. And I think that's a huge responsibility, often not considered as much as it should be. But there are certainly people who understand the role of media. So media plays an all-important role in terms of shaping ideas, allowing for ideas to flow freely. And certainly media has the greatest responsibility is keeping the room open for dissent. Because if you've got otherwise it's propaganda, which is the other end of it. So the media has a very important role in terms, and I think Nandos, I mean, it sounds very worthy, and I'm not claiming it, but Nandos ads are not prescriptive. Nandos points of view are not prescriptive. They pick up on a popular point of view, but it's open for discussion. So whether dictators, is Robert Mugabe the last dictator standing? Is Robert Mugabe a dictator at all? Were the other guys in there dictators? What has that got to do with the state of affairs in the world? All of those are discussion points that are left open for interpretation. We're not saying that he was, and even if we do say that, it's done in a way that opens this point of discussion, so people can talk about it. So I think the role of media is very important, and it's crucial that in South Africa we have that freedom to be able to expose people to different points of view, so that it kind of harnesses a culture of introspection, a culture of question, of probing, of asking, of agreeing, of laughing, of crying, So it's got a very important role in the future of this country.
And obviously with the Nano ads really does that as well. So it touches on some sensitive issues and get people to laugh about it.
Yeah, I mean, our focus in terms of Nandos being a brand in South Africa is social commentary, and by nature, that's basically saying, because there's never one point of view, is there? There may be a popular view, but there's always a dissenting one. And that's why I would say very controversial. That's what I loved about Julius Malema. Is while everyone was thinking one way, here came a voice, and if you excuse the manner in which he had said stuff, he made some very pertinent points about the state of our country. And that environment is important, that you have a dissenting voice, because that makes you question your point of view.
Definitely. So in conclusion, in your latest ads, you made a parody with Santa and Ben Kingsley in it. Would you like to tell us a bit about that?
Okay, well, that didn't start off with, let's see who should we piss off. Never starts off that way. I promise you that. I can give you my word. Where the brief started out was, it came from the client who said to us, people need to know that Nandos offers more than just chicken on the bone, i.e. quarter chicken, half chicken, etc. We need to let people know that we have other things such as burgers and a rice dish and a wrap and etc. So that was the starting point, and that was the brief. Do an ad on options, that we have options. It so happens that when you put it out to the creative people, the studio, they come up with many different ideas. That was just one of them. But we know there are no holy cows. There are one or two, but there are no sacred cows when it comes to Nandos. So they come onto this boardroom table as a review, and we discuss them. And one of the ideas was, has anyone seen that ad that Sansam did? And everyone, yes, of course, we love that ad. And this was the spin on it. So while that was done very surreptitiously, that the guy, we're going to make it quite obvious. So that's where it comes from. So it was very considered in terms of a brief. We showed 3 meals in that ad. We wanted to show more, in fact, but it was about options. Secondly, the point I wanted to make was we were nervous doing the ad because Sansam had actually taken another brand to court legally for having spoofed one of their ads. So there was quite a thing that set a precedent there. And we were expecting a similar response from them. We were expecting some response, either legal or other. We didn't know what it would have been. And that was good for us because we made sure that the ad looked completely different to theirs, even though it looked absolutely the same to everyone else. And we took a lot of care in making sure that was taken care of. But we were depending on Santam saying something for the longevity of the campaign. So any campaign nowadays with the stimuli that we're exposed to has a shorter lifespan. It just does. There's too many other things. And in South Africa, we have amazing things in the newspaper to keep us entertained. So we were depending on it, and when they responded the way they did, we thought it was genius. We thought that their ad was brilliant, and the way they responded was amazing, and they had led us to do something. The difference is we had to do it in a Nandos way, which is why we over-delivered. So when their ad came out, it was amazing, got the interest back up, the tweets went up, the social media spiked again, people were talking about it. It was brilliant because it had already been on air for about 8 or 9 days, if I'm not mistaken. And then suddenly it kind of tapers off, and then that just created the spike. And then we responded by over-delivering. So they demanded we deliver on Thursday. We made sure we deliver on Wednesday. They demanded, and we offered to deliver on the Thursday as well because they were having a big press contingent arriving. So we did that. And then on top of that, Nandos offered a meal a month for the rest of the year because that's the way Nandos does it. And then we ended off, obviously, with an ad that stated what we had done in a true Nandos way, which ended off by going, an insurance company that responds so quickly, who would have thought? So we have to have the last say.
Excellent. Well, Ahmed, thank you very, very much for your time.
Absolute pleasure.
We really appreciate it, and thank you for a very informative interview.
Absolute pleasure.